Thank you for joining me and making me look important. We've heard a lot today, and I think an important quote that was said was by the president of Kenya, President Ruto, who said, we need to rethink the whole architecture of financing. And I'll start with you, Mark, with why is that important?
Well, I actually have two even better quotes from this morning's sessions, which I hope you got. One was from Yetunde, who said, money saves lives. And the other was Carly, who said, money is power. And the two together, that's what we need. We need money that is spent on exactly what we've been hearing this morning, and we'll hear a little bit later on this afternoon, about the tools and interventions that do that most fundamental thing: help save mothers and children's lives who otherwise would die of completely preventable causes. And the current financial architecture, which is a big, ugly term which makes you think of sort of structures, is actually just as simple as, should the world be putting money where it matters most? And where it matters most is saving human lives. And currently, as you've heard, particularly because of the COVID crisis, but through a lot of other challenges, we are not, as a world, putting our money where our mouth is. Our mouth has said the SDGs are a core set of commitments by every global leader to every single citizen on the planet, and we're not paying up, and we need the financial system and the financial architecture, which is the big banks, the big agencies, to step up.
Well, yeah. 3 people like that.
It's one more than like my abs.
So what does that mean in practice? I'm going to ask you, what does that mean in practice on the ground, in communities, especially in Africa, where I need to charge my phone?
So what it means in practice globally is this: we need to move money from where it is sitting unutilized to where it is most needed. And it also means we need to stop draining money from where it is most needed to where it is not needed. So that's simply what it means in practice. I agree with Mark. We have a global financial architecture that's outdated. We're talking about a system that was built at a time where most women in this room could not vote, could not get a job, or open a bank account without a man's permission. We're talking about a system that was built when most of Africa, actually, were colonies of Europe. How can it be fit for the world we live in today? But for me, what we need now is we need voice. We heard President Ruto. And if we had voice as Africa, it would be very simple. You would hear 4 things from us. We need more concessional finance. Not go to the G20 and say we need more concessional finance, but nobody actually commits the additional finance. We need a debt framework that is fair, one in which interest rates are fair, one in which we can restructure when we need, and one where, when an existential crisis happens, we can actually pause our payments. Thirdly, we need richer countries to release assets they are sitting on and not utilizing it, and pass it preferably through the African Development Bank. Whoop, whoop. And finally, look, we are not a problem to be solved as Africa. We are part of today's solution. So get us in that green room, let's talk, let's agree the solutions together, and we will ensure we are leaving a better world for our children. You don't, we will be a problem. Simple as that.
Excellent. I'm glad you gave that answer with that passion. Mark, I'm going to ask you now, what does that mean for us goalkeepers? And how can this community get involved in making this, what seems to be very far away change, actually happen?
Well, first and foremost is use your voice and in every possible way to call out the fundamental injustice and unfairness of the current system. What you heard from President Ruto, what Mavis just talked about, this is not just an Africa issue, even if many of the problems are most acute in Africa. This is across large parts of Asia, Latin America, other parts of the world. We have well over 50 countries paying more in debt service than they do in health. You simply cannot achieve the health outcomes. You can't save those 800 preventable maternal child deaths a day. You can't save the thousands of preventable child deaths if you aren't allocating into those core investments in human development, health and education. So if you have a structure and you need advocacy campaigns, we've seen that happen in the past before with what was the Jubilee program, but we need to combine that with a very 21st century approach to the SDGs, which says the countries need to be in the driver's seat. It is the countries accountable to their own citizens for these SDG implementations. So it's also holding the leaders of the countries, President Ruto and others, accountable. He has made a set of commitments. The Kenyans and the need to hold him accountable, and he wants to be held accountable. How can we combine that and not make it an abstract thing that sits up and is filled with acronyms that goes on conference circuits, and make it something very real about essentially show us the money?
Mm. That's exactly what it is. It shows us the money, and I guess we all kind of know that. Everything we're trying to do is based around the money. And we have the solutions sitting in this room, and everybody's trying to do their best. But what would it mean if we do not achieve the things we say we're going to achieve? What does it mean if we do not release these monies and create this reform, especially for the young people?
Okay, so Loyiso, Africa is the world's fastest growing and youngest population. We are sitting on natural resources that can drive the world's green industrialization. And we are quickly becoming the world's largest single market. We can either harness these opportunities, or we can imagine this world. A world in which the military coups we are seeing now and the conflicts are no longer the odd issue, but the norm. We can imagine a world where young people are fleeing the continent and taking dangerous journeys to get to economic opportunities. We can imagine a world where, as Melinda said earlier on, women and children are dying from preventable causes. We can imagine a world where there are a lot more women and children dying from preventable causes. And worst of all, we can imagine a world where we suddenly become a net contributor to climate change. None of us wants to imagine that world. So I just want to leave all of you with a Kenyan proverb. Treat the earth well, because it is not handed to us by our parents. It is loaned to us by our children. So unless we all work together, and young people today hold us to account for ensuring we are giving them a better world, but most importantly, a world that they can ensure they are holding safely for our grandchildren, we are in trouble. So I personally want to imagine the first world, the brilliant world of Africa at the heart of a global phenomenon, rather than the other one.
That's very true, yeah. And I'm glad they've allowed the space for us three young Africans to sit here and discuss this.
I'm young.
I don't appreciate any of those giggles. Thank you. And as Africans, how are you guys feeling about the future? How are you feeling about where we are with the SDGs and our possibilities of actually achieving it by 2030? I'll start with you, Mark.
Okay. First, I'm angry. I'm angry that we are at the SDG halftime and we haven't stepped up, and at a time that so many countries in Africa and across the world faced unprecedented difficulties during COVID. The rich world, by and large, spent trillions of dollars on their own economic resilience. We haven't seen the resources, the focus, the action back on the SDGs. That's why we see this as a refocus and sign-up moment. It is about accountability, commitment. It is hopefully, and certainly I've left this morning already, much more inspired and excited to action. And Goalkeepers is all about possibility. For what we're outlining today is not pie in the sky. It's very concrete, implementable actions. They're low cost, they save lives, they can be rolled out today, tomorrow, next week, next month. We've got key events coming up. We've got lots of good rhetorical commitments. The UN is very good with words. The G20 is good with words. We have some big meetings coming up. World Bank, IMF meetings. We have the COP climate talks at UAE at the end of the year. Those need to be meetings where those words shift. You see them turned into that money, that money is turned into the implementation, whether it's food security, climate adaptation, health, it saves lives. And that actually makes me optimistic because the data shows, yes, we're behind, it's a tough half-time, but we can absolutely meet those goals by 2030 if we take that action now.
Excellent.
So I'm optimistic and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because young people today are innovative and dynamic, and they care less about race and sexual orientation and more about coming together for a better world. That makes me hopeful. I'm hopeful because we've done it before. We did it with HIV/AIDS. We did it with the last debt crisis. We did it with the MDGs. And then those were existential crises, but we did it. And that tells me that as a people, we make our biggest gains in our lowest moments. So I am hopeful that we will make our biggest gains. And finally, I'm hopeful because our voice is being heard. The African Union is a member of the G21, not G20, G21. And the World Bank is doing excellent work to leverage additional resources so that their money can go further. It's a start. We're being heard.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah.